Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Contra Mundum. I am one of your hosts, Pastor Andrew Isker, and with me is the other host, CJ Engel. Hello, CJ. How are you? How is your giant printer behind you in video here?
Yeah, the printer's great. I'm even better. I was supposed to spit my gum out before, but now it's disgusting to do it live, so I'm going to hold it in the back of my throat for an hour.
That's okay. No one will care.
I'm doing good. I'm working out, getting in shape, getting stronger, and I feel good. And it's fall.
Yeah, is it true that? Oh, me too. Well, maybe probably less than you because we only have it for a few weeks here. But right. Is it true you can now deadlift 800 pounds? Is that correct?
The rumors need to be confirmed via video. There's a video out there of me doing that, but you have to.
All right. Well, we'll have to dig that up and see how many plates you have on that barbell. Well, great. I'm glad that you're doing well. I'm also doing well, and a lot has happened since we last convened. We've had some guests on lately, so we haven't been able to discuss current events. And partly because in the summer nothing really happens. Summer's usually kind of boring in terms of news and events and things like that. But now it's fall. And things are heating up. So a lot has occurred lately. We didn't get to talk. Last week briefly we talked about your spat with Jenna Ellis, and maybe we'll have time for that this time. Maybe next week. But also there's a big conference going on right now as we record. This big G3 conference. I'm not a Baptist, so I'm not familiar with that world so much, and neither of you. Neither are you. I one time accidentally accused you of being a Baptist, and you didn't take that very kindly.
That's my background. So
yeah. I mean, we're all kind of come from that world anyway. I say this kind of stuff tongue in cheek, and I'm sure many of our listeners are Baptist, and so we mean no disrespect to them at all. But it's this big conference of kind of like Reformed Baptist, Reformed evangelical type people, and it was interesting. Because one of the speakers is a man named Owen Strachan, who is not a huge fan of Stephen Wolfe and Christian nationalism and many of our friends, many of the people we've had on the show here. He doesn't seem to like us, and so he gave a talk, and in the middle of his talk he had an interesting quote, and so I have it right here. Let's play it, and I'm curious what you think about this quote, CJ.
Does not love a merely white church in America. God loves a global people of all backgrounds and tribes. This is under fire today from different corners, but we confess it and will stand here come what may. God loves the global body of Christ.
Okay. All right. Well, that was very powerful from Owen Strachan. What do you think, CJ? What do you think about Owen Strachan's comment?
Well, yeah, I told you. I think that the best way to summarize that for that little segment there is that it is a "Here I Stand" LARP. It's like, we have this like very theatrical instinct where these people want to stand for something, and they want to be made. I wouldn't say he wants to be made famous, but he wants to signify the fact that he's standing this like ground against this tide, and everyone's like, who is he talking about? He's completely making this thing up, but he has this instinct to LARP as having a Lutheran "Here I Stand" moment, and it's ridiculous, and it's kind of goofy and cheesy, and I thought it was sort of like a drawn out analogy to sort of the 1990s Christian bookstore things. Like, it's just like, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know who he's talking about. Well, I do know who he's talking about, but obviously it has no real applicability to the actual, and it's not intended to. These things work. It's kind of like the Russell Moore, like this is how these people operate. They can scratch the ears of these, the masses that have no idea of what's going on in the rediscovery of like magisterial political theology. People are going to great lengths in our circles to really reorient themselves to the Christendom's view of political topics, and we're reorienting ourselves. We're trying to grapple with very serious issues because we're facing very serious circumstances. And the idea that Owen can go up there, and historically it's worked, I think. I told you before he does it because it works. But actually, just thinking about it over the last couple of minutes, maybe it's not working so well anymore. I mean, Mark Jones, Doug Wilson, thousands of other people are like, yeah, it's awkward. And I think probably even James White thought it was overblown,
Yeah.
Like you can have disagreements.
Yeah, from what I heard, yeah.
You don't want, like, maybe you disagree with like the priorities that Stephen Wolfe places on some of the difficulties of culture and even ethnicity. But to summarize it in the way that he did, I think it's really awkward for the G3 voices, and especially Owen in particular. I think a lot of people are fed up with it because they recognize that it's actually just an echo of dominant social themes. That's all it is. So that's kind of my take on it. It has no applicability. Yes. It's goofy and awkward, and I don't even know what else to think of it. He's just a goofy and awkward guy. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so many things you could say about it. I mean, to start with, Stephen, shared it and said, if you just showed me this quote, I would assume it's from Russell Moore. That's, like you read it. Who is arguing that God only loves a white church in America? Like anybody, right? Anyone. Is anyone saying this? Literally, is there a single person? Can you name one, Owen Strachan? Can you name a single person that says this? Of course he can't. Of course he can't. There's nobody that thinks that. The people, but what he's doing, like you said, we know who he's talking about. He's talking about Stephen. He's talking about me. He's talking about all of us, right? That's who he's talking about. And he's trying to say that we think that God only loves the white church. And that's furthest thing from the truth.
It's hard to tell.
No one said that anywhere.
It's hard to tell if he really, because part of me thinks that like they really have no idea what's going on. They really can't wrap their minds around the concepts that we're grappling with. So maybe he really does think this is what's happening. Like maybe he really is intellectually lacking. It's possible. But I think it's more of a posturing thing. Like, he needs to
certainly,
he needs to have this "here I stand" moment. It's just awkward,
No, I think so much of it is posturing that they want to position themselves as the arbiters of historic Christian faithfulness, and that here are these other people who are challenging them and challenging so many of their assumptions. And they say, I mean, why are they doing this? It's not because, like, for instance, there's not tens of thousands of people out there of Christians in churches, like theirs, that are saying, yeah, God only loves the white church. Yes, he does. Yep, that's what I believe. And I got that idea from Stephen Wolfe. Like those people don't exist. Like they have to create these straw men, right? But at the same time, the people that do exist are the thousands of people who are reading these ideas and aren't believing the insane straw man that he's creating. They're believing what you said. They're believing in historic Protestant political theory. They're rediscovering these things and how they don't how these ideas do not conform with post-war liberal democracy and secularism and pluralism. And so they're threatened by that. That's what they're threatened by. So what do they have to do? They have to say, oh, you're a bunch of racists that only think that God cares about just white people. That's it. All right. That's what you are. Come what may. Here we stand, right? Like it's so absurd. And these people they're so pathetic. And the worst part about it.
The funny thing is, like, how many times has he very obviously been shown by Stephen and others around him again and again that this is not what I believe. You're mischaracterizing me. You're mischaracterizing the position of my book. There's been articles written on it. He's had ample chances to really understand what's going on, and he refuses to do so, because in order to grapple with it himself, he loses, his branding opportunities.
Yeah. If he actually dug in and like Stephen says, did the reading, he would have to change his positions on many things. And I mean, to just even back up a few minutes to what you're saying about, like, they don't get the moment that we are in. They don't understand the problems that we are facing. That's absolutely true. They look at these things. I mean, just even the issue of like right now, I mentioned stuff is happening now. All of these videos are coming out of the border, and there are tens of thousands of foreign people from third world countries, not even people from Spanish speaking. They're Chinese, they're Africans, they're people from all over the world invading the southern border of the United States. It's going to be in the millions in the calendar year. And like, what's the purpose behind that? And you see, like, it looks like a Bizarro World January 6th video where you have Border Patrol agents opening up the gates and waving them on in. And it's like the United States federal government is facilitating the invasion. And to what end? Why do they do this?
Right. Why?
Well, everyone knows why. Everyone knows why, because they know that these people, when they come in, they're going to have kids, and those kids are going to vote. And who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for the regime. That's who they're going to vote for. It's the regime reasserting its own political force, its own political authority through this literal back door. And the point is, like, you see this, and a bunch of people have been posting these maps lately of like voting breakdowns and things like that. Right? Why did they do this? It's because the native
white evangelicals are the lone bulwark. That's why.
Yeah, the native born. You look at the electoral map or the congressional map from 2022, and it's like, okay, if only white people voted, you would have like 300 Republicans in the House. Yeah, if it was only white men, it'd be like 350. And so you know the reason why. Everyone knows the reason why. You're just not allowed to say it, right? Why did they cheer the demographic replacement of white people? It's to assert their own political control and political power, right? That's why. That's why, because the population of the United States is their enemy. That's why, right? Everyone with half a brain knows this stuff, but these guys are terrified of saying that, because like, you have to deal with the issue of race, right? You have to like look at it and say, oh, I think they might not like white people in our country. But I'm not allowed to say that. What do I do? Like, that's the conundrum that people are in, and they're too cowardly to admit reality. That's one of the big things. Is, I mean, imagine if you had someone up there who said this. I mean, apparently, James White, who I think, I'll disagree with him on things here and there, of course, but I think he's an honest guy. He's not like one of these guys who are just malicious and intentionally stupid. I
have serious disagreements with this too, but he comes across as intelligent and well-meaning for sure.
He's intelligent, well-meaning. He's not malicious, right? Wherever I disagree with him, I don't think he's doing it out of spite or things like these guys.
And he's also definitely not committed to liberal democracy.
No, exactly. And so when he's up there on this stage, like, he disputed the things that this guy was saying. So, great. I'm glad that he did. But if you had a guy, like, if you had him, like, and he's brought up points like this before, right? If he goes up on there and says, right, like, hey, like, demographic replacement's real. That's a real thing that's happening in our country. And how should Christians approach this? Right? How should Christians think about the demographic replacement in their own country? Right? How should you approach this idea? Right? These people, their heads would explode if someone said that or did that.
I don't think he would go there.
Go nuts. I don't think he would.
Go there.
No, I don't think he would. But say somebody did.
He will in 3 or 4 years, though.
Because
I think things are going to become so obvious and in your face.
Actually,
he's not going to be able to
deny it. Among the speakers there, probably the first one to bring it up would be Vodi Bakum. Actually, the first one. I think he would. I really do think he would.
I agree. Yeah.
And so anyway, I think, like, so much of it is these guys, they're living in neutral world, and so they approach these problems from that standpoint, and they believe that, if we're just good, nice little boys in this secular pluralistic system, and we mind our P's and Q's, everything will work out okay, right? They'll leave us alone, they'll leave our churches alone, they'll leave our families alone, and that just simply isn't reality. And they're not willing or ready to fight. And so they fight the people that are willing and ready to fight on these issues. And so I think, like, down the road, as things continue to develop, and whatever happens in the next calendar year, which in 2024, I think there could possibly be a sea change in terms of, and I think that's what they fear, is that someone like Stephen, who is extremely intelligent, extremely well thought out, everything that he says is,
it's crazy.
He's thought through the implications of, and people are going to be drawn to him.
I'm impressed with him because, like, I mean, and you too. I mean, you have your own, but you guys are literally changing the conversation. Like, that's, I never thought, you know, I'd see it, but like the conversation is literally being redirected right now, and it has over the last 5 years. I'm not a very good you know, propagandist strategist, you know, so I didn't like the phrase for like technical reasons, but things wouldn't have gone the way they've gone if it wasn't for the phrase. The phrase needed to be provocative. It needed to get people talking about things, and it has. And it's really fascinating to see these massive sea changes.
Well, yeah, and the thing too is, like, if we weren't using this phrase and running with it, you would have, you know, your Andrew Whiteheads and your Samuel Perrys and all these other dorks that, you know, go talk to the Washington Post and New York Times about all the dangerous Christians who are into politics, right? If we didn't run with it in a positive way, Christians would still be being attacked
for sure
all day long on the page. Like, so it's not like the damage is already done from the phrase. Like the left is already using it to attack anyway. So why not? It makes absolutely no sense. So maybe I am the, you know, the rhetorical strategist. We'll let you do the thinking, and I'll do the talking.
No, that's why I said on Twitter yesterday, like, just embrace the phrase and define it in accordance with your, you know, your desires. Just embrace everything.
Yeah. Assume the center. I mean, this is something that
like I said yesterday. White supremacy just means you love your people. That's all it means.
Yeah. I don't know. That was a pretty edgy. That was a pretty edgy. People are gonna go nuts with that. Surprised they haven't yet. Yeah, that hasn't been one of your spicier things yet, as far as reaction. But I think
no. But every time we say I appreciate my heritage, I want to maintain my customs, my norms, my way of life. They say you're a white supremacist. Okay, that's what it means. Like, what? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? That's
every time. No, like, you see this with
what am I going to sit there and debate someone?
Yeah, exactly. Like Ayanna Pressley, this congresswoman in whatever state, doesn't matter, who says that abortion bans are white supremacy, right? They want to control black bodies.
White supremacy.
Like everything that the left thinks is good, or like that hates that is good, they'll just call white supremacy. It's crazy, you know, and why do they do that? Because they know the rhetorical power of that phrase. That's why they say it. Because that's the boogeyman phrase, and like, because racist doesn't have as much cachet as it did 5 years ago, and so they've moved on to this phrase, and they'll move on. They'll just call when this dies out, they'll call everybody Nazis. They'll find something new to manipulate people with, but that's what they do. And so, no, I get it, but it's like, don't know if I'm going to apply that label to myself just yet, CJ. Thanks for. Thanks for brainstorming that one.
I categorically say that I embrace everything. And all it means is that I'm nice and I love my family.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, every time I say on my priority list, it starts with my family, my nuclear family, my extended family, my community. Every time I talk in terms like that, and I deny the fact that, you know, that I deny the idea that I have these universal preferences or these universal abstractions on the high of my priority list, I'm smeared with this label. So that's what it means. You know,
but CJ, why don't you love, you know, why do you love your neighbor across the street who's not a Christian more than you love a random Nigerian Anglican woman? Is the big question.
Right. Yeah, and I don't need to answer that.
I know. And it's like, well, yeah, I do. I do. I'm very happy that.
I'm not going to justify myself to these people. You know, that's
exactly. You don't need to. And that's like, the other, one of the other topics that we'll get into today, hopefully, if we have time, is, some of the controversies lately on Twitter. And, some people don't understand how online engagement or online rhetoric, works. Is you don't have to. Everyone thinks like, oh, you have to address everybody's argument and opinion the same way and be nice to them and be very friendly. And it's like, no, if this person's malicious and hates your guts and hates everything you love, you don't have to pretend they're like your best friend. You can just dismiss them and be like, no, that's stupid. Bye. Blocked. You know, like that why don't waste your time with people and cast your pearls among swine. Like, don't do that. That's not, you don't see anyone who ever, you know, wins arguments or has persuasive rhetoric, you know, sweating the small stuff like that, or dealing with every single little negative comment that people make. You can ignore people all day. I love ignoring people. It's great, especially when they reply like 4 or 5 times and you don't get a response. It's great. And so that's part of, you know, that's part of it, is like, you don't need to be defensive or think that everything that someone says deserves a response. When people are malicious and just downright evil, right? If you see the pronouns in the bio, you don't have to reply to them. Like that's a good standard to operate under. But yeah, I guess, I mean, one question I have for you is, you know, say things get crazier, you know, just for sake of argument, get crazier in the next year. They put Trump in prison, or they convict him. He wins from prison. You know, just whatever, concoct whatever potential reality you want, awesome. Where it's just, it would be great. But say it's just bananas over the next 12 or, you know, 14 months. What do you think will happen within the context of these conflicts? So like G3 and the anti-Christian nationalist, you know, evangelical leaders and people like that. What do you think will occur? I mean, will people in the pews begin to say, this is stupid, I'm not listening to these guys? Or will they still be, you know, submissive to these guys and say, well, they know the Bible really well, and so I'm going to listen to them? Like, what point, like, how crazy does it have to be for people to just break away from this and say, I'm done with it?
I think it has to get a lot worse, personally, before there is this severing of the mass, you know, the mass evangelical community and their leadership. On the other hand, so to speak, there is a great replacement underway, you know, and I think there's a changing of the guards, you know, in terms of the evangelical, you know, thought leadership, you know, underway. But I do think it has to get a lot worse first. Personally,
yeah,
I think there needs to be some economic agitation.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, it's becoming really obvious for anyone that's paying attention. Like, most of the jobs in urban areas are going to immigrants. They're like, people who are white are at an extreme disadvantage in terms of getting jobs that can help them economically provide for their families and children. Yeah. And they're all going to these immigrants. It's very obvious. I think it was like 60 or 70% or even greater probably for these corporations, 80, 90%. That's very real. And that's going to have downstream ramifications for the relationship between the leadership that told the evangelical masses that nothing bad was happening and they were being conspiracy theorists and watching too much Tucker Carlson. You know, there's going to be a mass severance between those, you know, severance between the leadership that was, you know, mocking them, like when Russell Moore was mocking people for watching Tucker Carlson, and the people in the pews that are like, wait, I'm looking out my way, like, who am I going to believe? You know, the evangelical thought leadership or my own lying eyes? You know, it's like going to be really obvious to people who are actually having the lived experiences and don't have the, you know, luxuries of living in an ivory tower that they were misled.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you saw this with 2020, though. You saw this with all of the fortification that took place, where people saw that and they understood exactly what was going on, and then they go to their church or they go read their favorite evangelical writers, and those people treat them like they are insane. Right? Those people treat them like they're nuts because, oh, you're some crazy QAnon lunatic, right? Who believes in the Kraken and a server in Germany and all sorts of insanity. It's like, no, it was just, you know, a tiny percentage change in a handful of urban areas that swung the whole thing. So like, what do you, that's not so crazy. right? What's so crazy about that? So like people were,
I really like.
I hate using these words. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go ahead. I was going to.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, but like gaslighting as a thing, you know, I hate that phrase because it's just ubiquitous and it is almost meaningless. But that's how they're feeling. It's like they see these things occur in real time right in front of them, or same thing with immigration, everything else. But then they're told nothing is wrong. If you think that you're a lunatic, you're crazy, and you're probably a bad person and a racist if you think anything's wrong here. So just go about your business. And they're stuck. They're like, well, what do I do? And so part of it too, I think, is that there actually is an alternative. There is, you know, we talked to Nate Fisher. He calls it the new Christian right, which I think is a great name. You know, if you want to talk about, you know, naming things and propaganda and things like that, rhetoric. That's a perfect name, because there is something that actually is extant, when in the past, like 20 years ago, when you and I are in college and we know that things are not right with the system, there's something inside telling us something's weird. At least that was my feeling. And yeah, and I think that was pretty much yours too. You know, then we get into libertarianism and go down that whole road. But there was no, other than Ron Paul and like libertarianism and things like that, there was no like outlet for anyone and no leadership for anyone to go to say, hey, we should maybe listen to these guys. Like, these guys have some good stuff to say. And they seem to be, you know, operating within reality, and I'm going to listen to what they have to say. Right. That didn't exist 20 years ago. Right. It wasn't there. And so now it does. Now there are people like Steven. Now there are people like many others who have something to say. It makes sense, and it completely contradicts the people that are lying to you or are completely naive. So I'm optimistic. I'm white pilled about the future, even though the future looks really grim. You know?
Well, you know, I think we've talked about this before, but what happens when there's actual livelihood and economic consequences for adhering to these ideas? I mean, that is coming. I mean, you have to be careful what you say, who you read, what books you order online. You know, like you have to be really careful. These things are coming into reality, so it's going to be really hard to, you know, there's going to be sort of a temporary cap on how widespread these ideas can get, just because they're going to be underground and over the next decade. I mean, think of how fast things have gone over the last 10 years. I mean, the next 10 years are going to be 3 or 4 times as fast, you know? So, but, you know, regimes do that when they weaken, when they begin to crater, they begin to get desperate. So those things happen. But I do think it's going to become a little bit more difficult to spread these ideas for a while.
Absolutely. It's going to be, they're going to be attacking. They're going to be doing more than just, like, once doxing doesn't work, right? So I think Steven is pretty secure. Like, he's not going to get doxed from a job and fired. That's why they attacked Thomas Acord instead. And you know, I'm secure where I am. You know, obviously Torba's secure. Many people are very, very secure in employment.
I'm secure,
but
basically, you know.
Yeah. But like then after that, if they can't get rid of you, if they can't get you fired from your job, right? The next level is, well, they'll concoct some crimes or accuse you of whatever. Like they'll this is what regimes do. I mean, you just look at you look at the pro-lifers, you know, these Catholic women who, like 70, you know, late 70s women who stood in front of an abortion clinic and are going to prison now for it. Or you look at the men who got executed by the FBI for Facebook posts, right? There's not going to be any consequences for that occurring, right? Nobody's going to go to jail over doing that. So like that kind of stuff, I think, is when you have a lawless regime, this is what they do. And so there is danger involved, you know, and the irony is, like, to bring it back full circle, it's like, here's Owen Strachan, you know, arguing against literally no one, saying, here I stand, I could do no other, come what may, we will always say that God loves the global church, when there's zero threat to him at all. Whereas like me, like, I mean, and you, we could go to prison for making this podcast in a year for all we know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm serious. It's not, this isn't a paranoid conspiracy theory. Like they could, you know, hopefully my wife's not listening to this. They could put us in prison for just speaking out against the regime. right? They would do that. This is where things are at today. So, who is actually being bold and taking a stand and being courageous and saying things that people don't want to hear? Everyone there is cheering for, yes, Owen, yes, you're so great and so bold and so wonderful. What a courageous, godly man you are. Meanwhile, right, people like actual prophets, right? What do they say? They say the stuff that people will throw stones at them for, right? That's what real prophets do. And so who is being courageous here, right? Who is being courageous, Owen? You or me? That's what I want to know. I'd love to meet him. Anytime you want to come on the show, Owen Strachan, you are more than welcome. We'd love to have a discussion that will go nowhere with you.
Yeah.
But you wanted to move on to another topic.
Oh, my mind was wandering 5 minutes ago. I don't know what we were going after, but what's the next topic on the list?
The next topic is, it seems like an age ago. I mean, we're recording on a Friday, and the comments that he made were, I think, Monday, maybe Sunday. I can't remember when they came out, but earlier in the week. But a week in internet time is like decades. So people have already forgotten about this by now, but I think it's still worth addressing and talking about. Is Trump was interviewed by somebody, it doesn't really matter who, and was asked about the heartbeat bills and 6-week abortion bans and things like that. And his comments were that, and maybe they were taken out of context. I don't know. I haven't even seen the whole clip, so I can't tell you one way or the other if they're taken out of context, if he's referring to the entire abortion debate as terrible, or if he thinks those bills specifically are terrible. But he said, I think it's terrible.
So the bills were state level criminalization bills, or
I think so, or just bans banning. They're banning abortion after like 6 weeks or 15 weeks, or all the different bills like that. And so, say for sake of argument, he did say, I think that's terrible, right? Don't agree with that. I think he's wrong. They're not terrible. They're very good. And if they are terrible, it's that it isn't banned at conception, right? That's where they're terrible. But he's coming at it from a perspective, and his criticism of them is coming at it from this pragmatic, realpolitik strategy of, if we're too hardcore on the abortion issue, that's going to cost us votes in the general election and things like that. He's already, and some of this he said, why does he say these things? Because he's already got the nomination in the bag. And so he's already begun the general election campaign, basically. So he's trying to, moderate and make it look like he's very moderate on this issue, which I'm not commending him for. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying this is what he should do. But it feels like, to many pro-life people, a great, grave betrayal of what we believe. And so many people are upset. People are like asking me, is Trump still your guy? Is he still, you still support Donald Trump? And it's like, hold up just a minute. Let's back up here just a second, because I think so much of this, I mean, there's a few things going on here. So much of it is approaching contemporary presidential politics from the frame and standpoint of business as usual, that this is a normal presidential election and we want to get the most pro-life candidate there is. And he has to kowtow to us in order to get the nomination and in order to secure our support. Those conditions don't exist anymore. And it's unfortunate that in that sense that they don't. And why do I want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee in 2016? Why do I want him to be? Not because I think he's going to go in and create the policy that I want, right? That's not the main reason why. I don't think he is. I don't think he is, even if he wanted to. The reason why I want him to go in there and win the nomination and even win the election is because the humiliation the regime will undergo if that happens again. They're absolutely terrified of it. And it's an incontrovertible fact that they are, right? They do not want this guy to win the nomination. They don't want him to be on the ballot. And they absolutely, bar none, want him nowhere near the White House again. And so why is that? Is it because of his stance on abortion, whatever that may be, or even his stance on transgenderism? you know, whatever that may be too. We don't really know. He's a New York liberal that's squishy on these things, and he has been his, you know, entire life. Why do they not want him? Right, is the question. Right? Why do they not want him? Why are they not afraid of Ron DeSantis? Right? Why are they not afraid of Tim Scott? Why are they not afraid of Mike Pence, who apparently is, you know, totally 100% pro-life? Right? He, you know, he's the most pro-life candidate on the general or in the Republican primary ballot. Why do they not want him if this is the big regime issue? I mean, it's important to them. Absolutely is. I mean, you could see that in the wake of the Dobbs decision, how the extreme lengths they've gone to secure the right to kill a baby. But is it their biggest issue? No, I don't think it is. I think there are things even more fundamental to their power than that, right? They want the power in order to preserve this thing. Absolutely. But that's not the thing that gives them their power, right? This is a benefit of them having power, is they get to have the right to kill babies. It's not the thing that gives them the power. So they're about preserving their power above all else. And I want it destroyed.
The regime being delegitimized, and Trump could be a mechanism for that. Not the mechanism, but he could be part of that picture. But that is a prerequisite to actually having a more sustained pro-life ethos in America. You know, you have to delegitimize the moral subversion of the United States federal regime. You have to delegitimize it, and that's the function that Trump plays. People think it's 1984. We're going out for Reagan again. It's like that world has disappeared. The enemy is in power, and we have to undermine them and take them down. Like politics as usual is not going to do it. It's gonna consolidate power. That's what will happen when you have someone who is like a Ron DeSantis. So he's been great for Florida, but federal politics is much different than state level politics, where you can actually play up some of those aspects of dissent from whatever regime narratives are happening. You can't do that if you have a personality and a go along to get along, just like idealism, like Ron DeSantis is. You have to have someone that's just doesn't care, that wants to be do his own thing, that's not part of the regime and their objectives. And you have to have someone who's a little bit of a chaos candidate, and those are the candidates I'm interested in.
Yeah, same here. Like, that's the point. Is I am voting for and supporting the regime being delegitimized. I'm supporting chaos. I'm supporting a literal criminal who has been labeled a criminal by the regime. That's what I'm supporting, right? I'm not supporting positive policy implementation. I think that ship has sailed. I mean, okay, he gets in there and he's able to write executive orders and countermand some of Biden's executive orders and things like that. That'll be good. Of course, judges will just overturn that. And so I want chaos. I want the regime to take the knives out again, even more. Like that's what I want. I want them to do their very worst to him. Right? That's what I'm after, because the day has gone and passed where we could just send our guys to Washington, D.C. and then vote on bills and make these things happen. Like right now, they're about to shut down the entire government. But don't worry, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell have agreed Ukraine's still going to get billions of dollars, even as they shut down the rest of the government. Right? That's where the power lies. That's what's going on. It's not like, oh, they're fighting each other. Boy, Mitch McConnell, he's really going to fight for the issue of babies being killed. No, they're not. At all. Right? The whole sick apparatus has to be destroyed. Right? That's what I want. I want to see it all come down. And call me cynical. And it's not even a question of okay, are you in terms of like pro-life politics after Dobbs. I think that's another question as well. Because some people want to take this very incremental approach. Some people want to have a staunch, no compromise whatsoever approach to dealing with these political issues and questions. And I think I see merits in both. I think you can't reach your objective unless you have a good chunk of people that are saying, no, we're not going to compromise here at all. Zero abortions, none. Well, and we're going to outlaw contraceptives too, as well, right? That needs to be the like line in the sand where people are going to draw it. And then, okay, once you have that line there, the other people can incrementally move toward that, right? That's how things have gotten where they are from the side of the left, right? The left has their side on the far left, constantly pushing, constantly agitating, and then you have the more moderate people implementing progressively, slowly, the goals of the far left, right? That's what they do. On the right, it works the opposite way, because you have, just even on the life issue, you have like abolitionists and pro-life people that have no compromise at all, thankfully, on the one hand, and then you have the incremental pro-life people, and they hate each other, right? There is no coordination or working together whatsoever. Both groups hate each other. They hate each other's guts, and it's like you're not going to accomplish anything that way at all, because the right is that way, and it's along the lines of the entire right anyway. The people on the far right, the more radical rightists on any issue, are constantly being undermined by Con Inc. and people closer to the center, closer to the halls of power, and so that presents a major problem as well. And all of that still is within the frame of the current order operating as it should, right? The current order working, and it doesn't at all. Right now, the United States federal government is facilitating an invasion of the United States as we sit here this very day. And like, it doesn't get more insane than that, right? They're planning to lock people down into their homes again. And why wouldn't they? They could go ahead and do it. Who's going to stop them? Maybe in Florida they won't, and that's it. And so that is that's where things stand, where people, I think, don't want to look at the time of day and understand where things are at. That and it's like, and I should say, like, the people who are like, no, Trump has said this stuff, I'm not going to support him, I'm not going to vote for him. He attacked the pro-life position, and great, if you don't want to vote for him or support him because of that, more power to you. I'm not going to stand anybody's way for drawing a line there.
It's a good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to say, no, you're wrong, you need to support him no matter what. Like, he's God's candidate. No, that's stupid. Like that. No, you need to uphold where your convictions are at the end of the day, always.
Right.
My point is that I want this guy to just be the wrecking ball getting swung at the regime. That's what I want.
You also have to realize too the irony of politics in our time, because it was literally the person who, on paper, who if they asked him to articulate his abortion philosophy,
yeah, I know,
right, would basically come up with an answer like this, like just completely like a ridiculous no-brainer like answer without any thought to it. The irony of politics in our time is the people who are the most articulate about these moral issues are the ones that have done far less than Donald Trump has done to combat the Roe regime in America.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Pence is a good example, right? Here is this guy who totally understands the pro-life position, every detail of it. And what has he done? His entire career in Congress, as a governor of a state, and as the vice president, nothing. Nothing.
And Donald Trump, who is, with the exception of Obama, probably the most socially liberal president in United States history, is the guy that defeated Roe v. Wade. Hilarious.
Yeah.
That's the irony of politics. Yeah.
I know. It's unbelievable, but that's how it works, is because like this guy didn't have any fixed positions on these issues. He saw, here's this voting block that I need, and I'm going to reward them.
Right?
Yeah.
He didn't make deals. He just kind of did what he felt was right at random times. he kind of tripped into the situation. He got some good advice from Mitch McConnell and stuff for sure. But
on judges, absolutely. At
the end of the day, like, it was the guy that had these just these anti-regime instincts that really helped him out and meant way more to the pro-life movement than all the fundraising, all the policy prescriptions, all the theorists, all the ivory tower people. For 30 plus years, they've done nothing except for grift on it.
60 years. It's not even 30. Like 60
really?
years they did nothing. Yeah, the pro-life movement.
Yeah,
60
years. I'm still in like year 2000 mode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it is, yeah, it's 50 or 60 years that they did this, and they did nothing. They accomplished less than nothing. They couldn't, and some of it is like during the Bush years, when George W. Bush was president, you could have ended Roe versus Wade then, right? You could have ended it. You actually could have ended it with, and this was one of Ron Paul's points, with a majority vote in both houses of Congress. That's all it would take, is just remove their jurisdiction from this issue and bring it back to the states. And they didn't do it. They never did it. They didn't even try to do it. And I think he put bills forth to do it, and they wouldn't even get out of committee. Like they had zero desire to do it, because what was Roe versus Wade to them? It was a golden goose that every 2 years and every 4 years would lay a nice golden egg of like 20% of the Republican electorate. And if you just said, I'm pro-life, then every sweet church-going grandma would check the box for the Republican candidate, right? That's what it was for them. It always was that. And then you saw this in the 2022 election where, I mean, it happened in my state. So you had, this really lame candidate. I mean, so Tim Walz, very unpopular because of, the Summer of George happening in our state. He doesn't send out the National Guard to put down the riots, and because of his lockdowns and all the mandates and everything else. Very unpopular governor. And they put forth the Republican candidate who was extremely weak and wouldn't attack him ever for some reason. And then Dobbs happens. And before Dobbs happens, he's running for the nomination, saying, I'm pro-life. I'm 100% pro-life, 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 pro-life. Then Dobbs happens, and Walz starts attacking him, saying he is going to ban abortion if he becomes governor. He's going to cause women to be raped and have to carry their babies, and like all these scary ads and everything. And what does he do? He begins flip-flopping and backtracking on all of this stuff, and had no defense. And all it would have taken him to do is say, if Tim Walz becomes governor, he's going to pass a bill where babies, when they're about to be born, can be executed by the doctor, which is literally the first bill that the Minnesota legislature passed this year. Was no restrictions on abortion whatsoever, right up until birth. And all you have to do is say, that seems pretty extreme, doesn't it? That, a fully formed baby, they could just lop their heads off right there as the mom's about to give birth. Like, you could say that and say, this guy's a sick maniac. This is what he believes in. And they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it at all, because they weren't conditioned to fight, actually, because it had always been fake, right? The whole pro-life thing, all their pro-life positions and everything else was always fake. They never believed it. None of these Republicans believed any of it. And so what is Trump here? What is he doing? He's articulating out loud what Republicans just believe behind closed doors, which is not, I'm not defending him. I'm not defending his standpoint or his viewpoint or anything like that. This is what they've always believed. It's the outlier is the Republicans that have actually fought for it. So, like, to give credit to this, people don't think I want to give credit to DeSantis. Credit to him that he passed this bill and moved the ball down the field. Right? That's great. I would prefer that they would have done more with the massive mandate that he got in the state of Florida and the majorities in both houses there. But better than a typical Republican. But anyway, it's interesting at how much more complex the politics around the issue has become, because they don't have their just simple, easy, we need to end Roe versus Wade. I'm pro-life, right? And then, like, now that that's gone, now it becomes much murkier and more difficult, and much more difficult for them to win an election by being pro-life, right? So you're finding out, okay, who actually really is and who isn't. And so that's what I think about it is not, at the end of the day, I'm not cheering for Trump to win because I think he's great and could do no wrong, and I agree with him on it. I disagree with him on this massively, but I don't think that he is in a position where he's able to influence law in a way that under a normal system you would anyway. I want him to go in there and destroy things. I think he had his thing. It was like, I'm running for vengeance. And it's like, great. That's what I want. That's what I'm after. Please.
I think people need to separate like words and the dynamics of power, right? Like just because someone says something on one hand doesn't mean that his function within power is actually going to cater more to our interests and our long-term objectives. That's part of what Americans have been especially bad at. Westerners in general have been especially bad at, is they too often believe politicians and take them at their words. And they don't look at behind the scenes of what are the political dynamics that are actually going to happen with having this person in this office. You know, they have an inability to digest those things. They take them at their word. And that has led us down a really bad path, but we can't go back to practicing that right here. You know, the purpose of Trump is not because he says the things that are near and dear to our hearts. In fact, we've been betrayed by believing those things over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
We need to look more seriously at what are the political dynamics. The regime that hates our guts and hates our way of life, and they're trying to morally subvert the entire world, they hate Trump. And so I think we should operate on a different light, you know, based on those political dynamics than just you know, some words in an interview, which Trump kind of just he shoots from the hip. I don't think he actually even remembers his answer at all. So I don't really take it that seriously, and I disagree with him on that if he meant it. I don't really care either way because I don't approach things from that framework.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. It's like like I said before, Mike Pence is going to tell you everything you want to hear on that issue, and he is on the side of the people who want to destroy our country and our way of life. So you can be told the things you want to hear from someone, but what are you going to get? You're going to get both the destruction of your country and nothing happening on abortion. Or you can have this agent of chaos who will destabilize and delegitimize the regime that hates you. That's where I look at it. I mean, that's how my heuristic of understanding politics today is. And I think it's really difficult for a lot of people to do this because they see his weakness, admittedly, very weak on this issue and on transgenderism, on homosexuality, all these things that the regime is pushing around the world and in our culture and everywhere else. And it's very important to them, for sure. They see his weakness on those things and think, well, he must be on the side of the regime, right? He must be on the side of the regime. And it's like, well, no, he's not, right? They hate him and want to destroy him despite their agreement with him on these things. Like, how could it be more obvious? You know, that's how I look at it. It's not, you know, I think you have to look at the presidential election of these things, not in an idealistic way, in a way that you think that you're going to vote for a politician who's going to produce results on certain issues. It's about humiliating these people. That is, and people, like I saw, there was a poll that came out like a week or two ago that 30% of Americans have no trust in the government whatsoever. So like, if you want a metric of, any type of objective metric of, is the regime delegitimized or not, right? That 30 needs to become like 60 or 70, right? And so what is going to move that number up more? Is it going to be Ron DeSantis moving around the deck chairs on the Titanic? Or which, I mean, the conversation is dead. Like, he's done. Like, it's over, so I'm not even thinking about it in those terms. Or is it, or anybody else, right? Anybody else fixing things and is going to go to Washington and make things right. Right. Well, that's not going to happen. It's if anything, they'll move the number down. No, the number needs to be 60 or 70%, and putting the Republican nominee in prison would be a good way to move it up 40, 50, 60%. And that's what I want. Like people, I think, don't get this, that there is not going to be a change in America that is as radical and as fundamental as we need by voting. That's not going to accomplish. We're not going to vote someone into power who is going to fix things and make things right. It's going to be by the United States federal government becoming like the USSR, where one day the USSR existed. It has nuclear weapons. It looks so powerful and it's threatening the whole world. And then the next day, it's gone. How did that happen? It's because the people said, I don't really care what your laws are. you're not a legitimate government. Like all of them just finally said enough and stop believing in it. And like, this is what happens where you don't have to have violent revolutions or things like this. You just simply have the popular mandate to govern a place lifted and removed. And that's what happened there. And, and I think like the best case scenario for here is that happens here, right? That the popular mandate of the United States federal government just goes away. And we're on course for that, I think. Do you want to move on to the next topic? Do you have time for one more topic?
We got a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Before you have to get back to printing blueprints on your giant printer behind you. So there was quite a bit of controversy, in the last couple of days. Our friend Eric Kahn, who we've had on the show, we need to have him on again. You're going on his show soon. He had a tweet where, well, let me just pull it up. He had a tweet where he was being critical of women going to college, and it let me see, where is it at? Yeah, here we go. Many Christian, quote, fathers will pay big money to send their girls to college where they become a well-used mattress with a drinking problem. The same fathers will spend little to no effort helping their daughters find a godly husband. This is absurd. And apparently that quote upset some people that didn't like Eric's use of language in that quote. And so I had to say something. And I just pointed out that it's really funny that more people are upset with Eric describing, bad, horrible, feminine behavior than the actual behavior itself in question. So like all human societies really throughout all time that are functional, that work, female promiscuity, it was very highly shamed. It was very highly stigmatized. There was a lot of shame associated with it. People were criticized, ridiculed, all of that kind of stuff if a young woman was promiscuous. But now, right, where does the ridicule and the shame and the stigmatization lie? Now it lies in anyone who says that's bad. It's like completely inverted. I think it's kind of funny. And so people didn't like me saying that either, because it's the worst is you have all sorts of Christians that go on and say, well, that's not a very nice thing to say about women. You're really demeaning women that way by saying that. And like, you look at the Bible, like, how does the Bible talk? Right? How does the Bible talks about whores and whoring and whoredom and harlotry. And it's doing that.
These were words that really stung. I mean, back then, I mean, they were shameful. They were meant to communicate like dirtiness, filth. It was a disgusting thing to be tagged with these labels.
Yes.
Now they've been embraced. All feminism has done is just embrace those words. So we need new ways to shock people because that's a healthy response to the activity itself.
Yes, or it should be. And so, yeah, you have all the, like, these Christians, right? These like white knights and some, feminized women who like clutch their pearls. Oh my goodness. I can't believe you talked that way about women. And like, I look at it, it's like, well, why would I use that kind of language? Why would I talk about that? Well, I have daughters, right? I have daughters. I don't want my daughters to become like that. So I'm going to use this kind of language to shock people, particularly my own children, to say, this is really bad and you don't want to be this. Don't become that. Don't be a whore. And that's because it's bad. It's bad for you. It's bad. It's bad for your children. It's bad for society. It's bad all the way around. Like, it's absurd that you even have to explain why it's bad, right? That we are even at that point. But yeah, you have, like you said, there are people that are like, well, when the Bible is using that language, it's talking about Israel as a people. It's God or Jesus. It's not talking about individual women And so it's still demeaning to call women that. And it's like, the reason why that language is used is because the entire society understood that these things were bad and shameful and horrible, and you wouldn't want to be called that because these things are bad. And so having it applied to your entire society is even worse. It's even worse than that. But like, it escapes people's grasp of entirely. I'm at a loss. I don't know. Maybe I'm a man out of time. Maybe I don't exist for this time, but I look at it and I think if you're able to like transport your great grandfather to today and just show him around and show him the way people think and act, like how would he react? How would he react to that?
This is part of the problem. It's like the social engineering has been so successful that part of the justification for having the ideas that we do now is that they are improvements. We've come closer to the light. We've been stepping up the ladder of human development by having these new opinions on things and how we communicate with the harshness of our language. And so the fact that you appeal to even your grandfather, which I do too, is to them seen as you going backwards, and you're never allowed to look backwards. You only have to see yourself as being the next level of human society. We're better than them. The very fact that you're appealing to your grandfather shows that you have failed the most basic lesson of modernity, which is the most recent moment in time, is the most advanced state of development.
Yeah. You're regressive. You're a regressive Neanderthal. Why would you go back to that?
That is a heresy. I mean, the very fact of approaching things in that way with historical reference is the heresy.
Yeah. It's not allowed. Yeah. You cannot do it. And it is, I don't know, it's depressing because people should know better by now. Like they should get that. No, things are bad, and you need to be honest about the way things are, and you're not holier than God. Like God uses this language, you can too, right? If you're describing the same sins that God's describing, you can use God's words to describe it. And if you're afraid of using the same words that God does to describe certain things, the problem is with you, not with God or His word. Right? That's a you. It's because you fear men, or in this case, women.
I think there does need to be a correlative between the words that we use and the acts themselves. It's a disgusting lifestyle. It's filthy lifestyle, and you should be turned off by these descriptions. Yeah. You should change your life and not be a well-used mattress or whatever it was. If that offends you, think about.
I thought that was kind of tame too. Like I thought, like he could have used a lot of other things to describe that behavior.
It was a moderate take.
That's a PG take at worst. It's so funny that these people, man, like they are so completely beholden to trash world.
I think
that they can't do it.
Like these people are so like desensitized to filth. So I don't think it was the phrase itself. I think they were just kind of using that because they didn't like the message, and the message was that we have obligations and duties to each other as family units. That there is a function that the father has, and right now he's betraying that function, and we need to rediscover that function. That's what they hate.
Yeah, they're upset. They're upset that like he wasn't addressing women here. He wasn't addressing young women. He's talking about fathers. He's saying that they're the ones neglecting their duties. They have a duty to their daughters and to keep them from going down that road. And I think implicit in it too is like he's saying don't send them to college, where it's like, well, I mean, I think about this question too. Like, do I want my daughter to go to college? Because like I'm not going to be able to afford to pay for her to go to college. Like I don't want her to sign up for student loans and then go out to have a career and not get married until she's 35. Like why would I sign my kid up for that? That's insane. And at best she comes out of it unscathed. Whereas you send her to this place away from her family, away from any social buffers that exist to protect her. And now she's completely on her own and can fall easy prey to bad people. Like, why would I send my little girl to that world? That's nuts. And so that's what Eric's addressing. And they don't like that. They hate that because they want, women are liberated and you're going to keep her from having a good life if she doesn't go to college. And it's like so buried in there are so many implicit assumptions of Eric's that really set them off, and they don't have any like argument to make, and so they will attack, the phrase. Oh, your tone. I didn't like your tone. Exactly. That's really bad. Yeah, it's such a bad phrase. You really demean women with that. Like, come on, get out of here. Get out of here. Come on. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And I had to say something. Like, I'm just, it's been in my craw the whole time. We didn't have time today, unfortunately, to get to your spat with Jenna Ellis. Everyone will forget by next week. So maybe we'll save it for next week, or maybe something big will come up that we won't be able to talk about, because usually that's what happens. We finish recording, we hit end record, and then like giant news breaks. Trump has been indicted for the 17,000th time or something. And,
this one is big.
Yeah. He's done for now. Yeah. And so anyway, I'm sure more news will happen. We'll have some interesting stuff to talk about again next week.
Maybe I'll have another spat with her. Maybe I'll have a fresh one that we can talk about. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. And you too, Jenna, you're more than welcome to join our humble podcast to discuss your theories on extra.
It's actually funny. Like I would welcome her having a conversation with us. She has been majorly targeted by the regime. What a great time to attack it. What a great time to seek its delegitimacy.
Oh, exactly. Like, she's actually accomplishing what you're saying should be done, even though she doesn't believe in it. It's ironic. And yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's like, I feel for this woman. Like, she is under the gun. Like, she is being threatened with prison time for serving as a lawyer to a presidential candidate. Like, this is contesting an election. Like, it's insane stuff. Totally lawless, totally illegitimate. And so if anybody should get it, it should be her, but she doesn't. And so that's where things stand. But we're stealing from next week's episode already, so we'll save it there. Do you have any new stuff that you want to promote?
Nothing new. Just
nothing new. Okay. No, nothing at contramordor.substack.com.
Lots of drafts. How's that? Lots of drafts.
Right. Well, maybe one of them will be published before the next episode.
Yeah. We'll see.
I have a few new pieces out at news.gab.com. You wanted to check those out. And if you haven't already, please go purchase your very own copy of the Boniface Option, available at Bezos Mart near you.
Go to bonifaceoption.com, right?
And yes, go to bonifaceoption.com. It'll take you right there because, it's a nice little URL. So anyway, that really is all the time we have for today. It's been great catching up on the news here with you, CJ. I hope you have a great week. I'll try to have a great week, and I hope everyone out there listening also has a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.